The air in the studio was thick with tension. That kind you could cut with a knife and still not get to the bottom of. Bright humming stage lights beat down on the polished news desk like interrogation lamps, casting long shadows and sharpening the edge of every word. The smell of nervous sweat, floor wax, and expensive cologne mingled as cameras zoomed in. You could almost hear hearts pounding over the low hum of the studio monitors, and then cutting through the stale rehearsed pleasantries of political roundtable TV came the moment that stopped time. "You're nothing but woke trash." Donald Trump snapped, his voice pitched with that familiar, agitating bravado. He leaned forward in his seat, nostrils flaring like a bull about to charge, lips curling into something between a smirk and a snarl. Across from him, Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch, no blink, no fumble, just stillness, coiled and ready. Few moments of silence, and then she smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind that told a deeper story, of rage tempered by reason, of centuries of silencing met now with clarity and fire. Her voice, when it finally came, was calm, but it rolled through the studio like a gathering storm, "You know. I used to think you were just a relic," she began, tilting her head slightly. "Some half-cracked mirror of America's worst instincts. But now, I see you're not a reflection. You're a symptom, a warning." The producers behind the glass scrambled, waving frantic hands, whispering into headsets. But it was too late. America was already listening. Jasmine Crockett, the firebrand congresswoman from Texas, wasn't here to play defense. She had grown up in Dallas's Oak Cliff neighborhood, a working-class black community long ignored by the political machines that ran the state. Her mother had been her father, a union man who worked 2 jobs and still found time to read Baldwin and Hughes to his daughter by the flickering light of an old floor lamp. She knew struggle. She knew grit. And she damn sure knew how to speak truth in a room that wasn't ready to hear it. Trump, on the other hand, had been itching for a fight. His recent re-entry into the political spotlight, bolstered by a new media tour and a fresh legal team, had him swaggering with renewed venom. His campaign had pivoted, again, to attacking what he called radical, woke elites, which to him seemed to mean anyone with empathy, nuance, or melanin. But this wasn't the usual media clash. This wasn't a Fox News studio where guests were hand-picked to flatter the narrative. This was a nationally televised town hall hosted by a centrist outlet desperate for ratings and redemption. And tonight, they'd gotten more than they bargained for. As Jasmine continued, her voice took on the cadence of the courtroom, the pulpit, and the streets she came from. "You think calling me woke is an insult?" she said, hands folded neatly in front of her. "You think trash is something I haven't been called before? Brother, my ancestors were called worse, by men with more power and less shame. But we rose anyway." The audience, silent up until now, started murmuring, a few scattered claps breaking free despite the studio's no-reaction policy. Trump's face tightened, his left eye twitched. "I'm not here to be polite," Jasmine said. "I'm not here to be digestible. I'm here to be undeniable." And just like that, the moment shifted. She wasn't just answering a slursh, she was commanding the room. Back in Texas, her chief of staff Darnell watched from the office, pacing like an expectant father. He knew this moment could change everything for better or worse. Jasmine had been on the fence about even accepting the invite. Her heart was in her district, where roads were crumbling, kids were hungry, and the rent kept rising. But something in her told her this wasn't just about clapping back at Trump. It was about standing for the millions of people who never got to clap back at anyone. Meanwhile, Trump's team was already typing furiously, signaling producers to shift topics, to cut to commercial, to do anything to stop the bleeding. But Jasmine wasn't done. "You talk about America like you own it," she said. "But the truth is, you never built anything real. You inherited a throne of lies and bankrupt dreams, paved over the bones of people like mine. And you're scared now because we're not whispering anymore, we're testifying." The crowd erupted. The producers gave up. Trump opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in a long time, he didn't have a line ready. Back home in Oak Cliff, a young girl named Tamara, just 14, watched the broadcast in her grandmother's living room, eyes wide. She had been struggling lately: school, friends, her own worth in a world that seemed to dismiss black girls as either invisible or too loud. But as she watched Jasmine stand unshaken, her heart lifted. Not just because of what Jasmine said, but because of who she was. Subplot 1 had already bloomed across the country. A GOP strategist named Caleb Dorsey sat in his DC condo, nursing a glass of bourbon and staring at the screen. He wasn't supposed to care. He'd spent years spinning half-truths into policy, justifying every attack as tactical. But something about Jasmine's words hit him deep. It reminded him of the sister he hadn't talked to in a year, Rachel, a public defender in Chicago, who'd once called him a professional liar during Thanksgiving dinner. Caleb texted her that night, "You were right. I was lost. I think I'm ready to listen." Subplot 2 was underway. Back in the studio, Jasmine wrapped up. "I'm not trash. I'm testimony. I'm resistance, and you calling me woke. That's just code for awake. And yes, Donald America is waking up." The host finally spoke, stumbling through his closing remarks, trying to neutralize the aftershock. But the internet was already on fire. Hashtags trended within minutes. Hashtag woke and proud. Hashtag Crockett clapback. Hashtag InstantKarma TV. The days that followed were electric. Jasmine's office was flooded with messages. From elders who'd fought in civil rights marches, to Gen Z kids posting TikToks about channeling their inner Crockett. Campaign donations surged, not just from Texas, but from all across the country. She became a symbol not of outrage, but of clarity in chaos. Of course, the backlash came to death threats, smear pieces. A far-right PAC even launched a ridiculous cartoon calling her queen Wokezilla. She didn't blink. Instead, she released a fundraising t-shirt with the slogan, "Wokezilla ain't done yet." But it wasn't just the noise that changed, it was Jasmine herself. In the quiet days after the storm, she found herself walking the trail near her childhood home, the same path she'd taken with her dad when he was alive. She sat on their favorite bench, tracing her fingers over the initials they'd carved in the wood years ago. Her heart felt heavy, not with fear, but with responsibility. She thought about power, not just the kind you hold in office, but the kind that lives in the stories people pass down, the kind that changes hearts. And she realized something else. This fight wasn't about Trump. Not really. It never had been. It was about Tamara, and every kid like her who needed to believe they were seen. It was about Rachel and Caleb, and the fragile bridges between family and ideology. It was about standing so strong that your voice shakes loose the silence in someone else. And when Jasmine stood up from that bench, she knew something sacred had shifted, not just in politics, but in the very soul of the country. Because in a world obsessed with spectacle, sometimes the truth is the most dangerous thing you can say. And Jasmine Crockett, she said it loud, clear, and with a fire that would not be put out.